Welcome everyone. This is our first edition of Manomet's Small Seed webinar series. I'm Andrea Ferreira. I'll be your host today. I'm Manomet's Science Communications Manager. And as I said, this is the first one of 2026, so welcome. We're very excited to be here. I'm joined by two amazing guys that we're going to get to know a little bit more. They are Dr. Ryan Askren, waterfowl ecologist and director of Five Oaks Agricultural Research and Education Center, and Elijah Wojohn, shorebird biologist at Manomet. They'll be speaking about ducks and shorebirds in the Mississippi Delta. So I'm guessing all of you are very interested about this topic. But before we begin, I have some quick housekeeping notes. First one, for all of you to know that this session is being recorded so we can later upload it to our YouTube channel where you can share the link with all your friends that were not able to make it here to this live session today. Also, we will have a Q&A session, so don't be shy typing all of your questions in the Q&A box that you will have in the menu below. And last but not least, we will love to know where everyone is zooming in from today. So if you can use the chat and type in where you're from, where you're watching this today, we would just love to get to know, because that's the power of internet. We can be from very different locations. I have the guys in Arkansas, I'm in South America, so this is very exciting. Now, back to our experts. Today, we have two people from two well-matched organizations, Five Oaks Agricultural Research and Education Center and Manomet Conservation Science. Both organizations prioritize collaborative, science-based conservation that benefits both people and wildlife in the lower Mississippi Alluvial Valley. They are the experts, so I won't take any more of your time. Our virtual stage is yours, so welcome, Ryan and Elijah. You can share your screen and tell us all about it.
All right. Thank you all for being here today. Good morning or good afternoon, I guess, depending on what time zone you're on. I wanted to first introduce myself. I'm Elijah Wojohn with Manomet. Manomet is a nonprofit that uses science and collaboration to improve the health of flyways, coastal ecosystems, and working lands and seas. And then Dr. Ryan Askren, I'm very thankful that he's here to be a co-presenter today. He is a waterfowl ecologist and the director of Five Oaks Agriculture Research Center. And a really cool thing is partnership in conservation, and we're very thankful that Five Oaks and Ryan are a great partner working here in the Mississippi Delta with landowners, state and federal partners, and other nonprofits. So thanks, Ryan, for being here. Thank you all for being here, and let's get started.
Yeah, thanks, guys. I was really pumped to have the opportunity to talk with you all, share some of the work that both Manomet and Five Oaks are doing. And yeah, so Five Oaks is really a research education center and land conservancy. So we're located near Stuttgart, Arkansas, really in the heart of the Mississippi Alluvial Delta. And we're really here with a focus on people, wetlands, and birds. We're born out of a duck hunting operation, which I know a lot of folks don't view hunting and conservation or taking care of birds necessarily is the same thing. I really just want to highlight kind of the conservation through use ethic that we hold really dear, that we think has been really successful in North America, and talk about how some of this waterfowl, really hunting management, can benefit a whole suite of species, including shorebirds, and kind of explore some of the areas that we see opportunities to really work together to benefit waterfowl, shorebirds, and all sorts of other migratory birds here in the Mississippi Alluvial Valley. So I'm going to talk a lot about the Mississippi Alluvial Valley, lower Mississippi Alluvial Valley, but first I need to talk about the Mississippi River watershed. This is a massive catchment basin in the center of the North American continent, the largest of its kind, of course, in the U.S. and Canada. Drains about 40% of the continental U.S. And it's just an incredible system. Has functioned as just a huge complex of kind of wetland complexes and migratory corridors for centuries. However, there are a lot of changes going on to it that have negatively impacted the natural resources and the wildlife that depend on it. It is one of the most engineered river systems on the planet. We've got several dozen locks and dams up and down it. It's been channelized. The floodplain's been disconnected, and that's really why we're talking about a lot of the issues we're talking here in this presentation. and also why we're doing a lot of the work we're doing here at Five Oaks. I'd also like to point out that Leish has the benefit of having the notes on the PowerPoint, so I'm just kind of winging it at this point. But yeah, the Lower Mississippi Alluvial Valley, this is really focused on Arkansas, is this section that was carved out by the Mississippi, ancient Arkansas River, ancient Ohio River over millennia. And these rivers would have moved back and forth across this floodplain, kind of leveling it out, removing some of those land features, and that left just this incredible complex of wetlands. And here in Arkansas, that would have looked like historically lots of bottomland hardwood forests. So these bottomland flooded forests during different parts of the year. So all that green you see on this map would have been bottomland hardwood forest, and it would have been dynamic. Fire could have come through, altered that. Beavers damming up areas, killing trees. It would have been a cycle of succession from kind of permanent water to moist soil vegetation to mature bottomland hardwood forest. I don't want people to think that this was just completely forested area. There were pockets doing different things throughout there. And then one of the things I really want to emphasize is that tan in the middle there. So that was the Grand Prairie region of Arkansas that historically would have been tall grass prairie. Would have been maintained by fire, largely by Native Americans, or would have been bison, elk, prairie chickens, all sorts of incredible wildlife through here. But it also would have contained these depressional wetlands, really similar to the prairie pothole region in North America. That would have been, a flood-driven wetland system that would have flooded and then drained down at different times of the year. And that's where a lot of shorebird and waterfowl habitat probably would have occurred back pre-European settlement long ago. Now we've lost that. We've changed that landscape in a major way. So a lot of this landscape is now agriculturally dominated. So you can see all the orange on here is now agriculture. So you can see we've lost almost all that bottomland hardwood forest complex. What's left is really the lowest of the low. And we've converted it to agriculture. And that's led to a host of issues that we're dealing with here in the region, everywhere from forest health, water quality issues with our fisheries. But it's created this largely more open landscape than what we saw historically. And that's one of the things we're going to talk about today is kind of the agricultural side of things and how we can work in those working landscapes to also benefit shorebirds. And this area is still incredibly important to birds. We've lost a lot of habitat. A lot of it's been degraded, but 60% of all bird species still utilize the lower miss at some point during the season, during migration, or during the wintering period. We have 31 species of shorebirds that stop off here. I've seen everything from phalaropes to, all of your common peeps and to some of the bigger shorebirds stopping off in some of these ag and manage moist soil impoundments in the region. And this is kind of a finer scale look at those ecosystems I was talking about. So it's largely bottomland hardwood focused or dominated. That's a lot of where I spend my time on the waterfowl side. But we also have these agricultural habitats, these highly disturbed areas that we're getting in, doing soil disturbances, planting crops throughout the years. And we'll talk about some of the timing of that and how that might benefit shorebirds. And then we also have these really kind of ephemeral, we'll call them kind of managed moist soil areas. So these are largely maintained for duck hunting. So waterfowl hunting is a incredibly rich culture, big economic driver for this region. We have people come over from really all over the world to come hunt in this area. So there's thousands and thousands of acres that people are managing specifically with the intent to provide habitat for waterfowl. And that's kind of this area there on the left where we have different levels of disturbance. It might just be passive water management. It might be getting in there doing a soil disturbance, or it might be planting some agricultural like small grains kind of as a set aside within that rotation of maintaining more natural foods, things like smartweed and barnyard grass that are going to be drawn down and flooded at different times of the year.
All right, so Ryan kind of set the stage with habitat types and then our hydrology in this whole general region. So now I'm going to start talking about the waterbirds. So here we're going to talk about niche partitioning, which that's just an ecological process where similar species can occupy the same habitat without direct competition because of slight differences. So if you look at all the shorebirds, you'll see tall shorebirds, short shorebirds, shorebirds with recurved beaks or bills, and shorebirds with long, straight, narrow bills. And because of their leg length and bill length and shape, they can exploit different species in water and substrate. So aquatic invertebrates is just a fancy way of saying water bugs. So most of these shorebirds are eating aquatic invertebrates, water bugs, crustaceans, mollusks, and all sorts of things in the substrate. And if you look at the lower left graph, you can see preferred water depth. And the whole point of this graph is just to show you that most species richness, or the most amount of species, can occupy 0 to 10 centimeters, which is about 4 inches of water. So similarly in waterfowl and ducks, we also see niche partitioning, lots of species occupying the same habitat with a little bit of overlap, but they are exploiting different resources. How are they able to do this? It's by bill shape, lamellae spacing, and the size or length of the actual duck. So most of what we talk about with Five Oaks and in this region using rice, we're talking about the dabbling ducks, the dabblers, and they oftentimes forage in shallow water, walking around, and then they also will dabble or flip with their heads down, foraging through the water column. And then if we look at a comparison of this niche partitioning, we're going to look at a mallard and a northern shoveler. So the mallard is the yellow bill on the left, and the northern shoveler, oftentimes called a spoonbill or a spoonie in this region, has a spoon-shaped bill. And so because of these bill shapes, they're able to exploit different resources. And this graph on the right shows lamellae spacing. So for you non-biologists, all lamellae spacing means is it's basically a duck's tooth. It's tooth-like structures, kind of looks like a comb that you'd brush your hair with. But the more lamellae, the finer the filter. So northern shoveler, the bird up on top, and on the right side on the bottom graph, has a lot of lamellae. So it's mainly taking advantage of tiny crustaceans, aquatic invertebrates, and small seeds. So the mallard is more of a generalist species. It can exploit a wider range of resources and larger dietary items, such as acorns, larger seeds, tubers, aquatic invertebrates, snails, and all sorts of crazy things. Mallards are kind of known for choking down some pretty crazy things. So all that to say is we have shorebirds and ducks with high species richness, a lot of species occupying similar places, but they can do that because they're a little bit different, size and bill length.
Yeah, and one of the neat aspects of my job here is I still get to stay on the research side. So we've got a couple of different kind of collaborative projects going on. One of them I just want to highlight quick, really because of the overlap with forage items between mallard ducks and shorebirds. So we've been working in a diet study using some DNA metabarcoding techniques. And this is a big improvement. You used to have to go out, watch the duck feed, shoot it, go in, dump a bunch of ethanol down its throat immediately after you killed it, and then go through and spend hours and hours in the lab looking at what was in there. A lot of the, especially soft-bodied invertebrates, would break down really quickly. Seeds can be microscopic, really hard to identify, and you were really limited on the time and location you could go sample these ducks at. This DNA technique, we're using fecal samples out of really hunter-harvested ducks. But you can get this out of live birds as well, to sequence that to amplify the DNA, sequence it, and then compare it to a really global database of different plant and animal reference samples. And one of the coolest things out of this study, well, one is that their number one occurring diet item was oak acorns, which a lot of people in Arkansas didn't believe ducks really ate acorns or that they mattered. And there's a whole rabbit hole I could get down on why that's important for management. But really, all the ones with the dashes are invertebrate species, or species of bugs. And that's where there's a lot of overlap in the forage items. Really just trying to hammer home that a lot of the management we're doing is sympatric, is that it can benefit both the suite of waterfowl species that we have as well as the invertebrates. And down there at number 9 is chironomids, which of course are an incredibly important diet item for migrating shorebirds on stopover. Those bloodworms or the midges of the larva of midges. But yeah, I was just really pumped to kind of see these results and see the emphasis on invertebrates, even for mallards, which are highly adaptable, typically, very seed, agriculturally grain driven, that they're eating these invertebrates in these natural wetlands throughout the wintering period. And I also, just thinking through management, it's all about the timing, really the timing of water. That's the beauty of shorebirds and waterfowl, is they're both very water dependent. They like moisture. So I've put together this figure just to really show the overlap in the timing of migration and when these birds are here in Arkansas. And this is direct overlap. So these birds can be occurring in the same wetland at the same time. That's not to say, management for other species of waterfowl that are coming later can't still benefit waterfowl, and that there's not some really good avenues within that to manage both for waterfowl and provide really good stopover habitat for shorebirds here. I'd also like to point out that Lige said greater yellow legs are way cooler than lesser yellow legs. Something about a working group. So that's why I included greater yellow legs. But yeah, I just thought this was a cool way to show the overlap in the timing and when these birds are using these agricultural and wetland units at the same time.
First of all, let the record show that lesser yellow legs are awesome too, and I'm in a lesser yellow legs working group. So for any of y'all in attendance, I apologize for Dr. Askren's previous remarks. All right, ducks and shorebirds threats. So habitat loss and degradation, alterations in hydrology that we talked about earlier, water diversions, all sorts of issues with water there, channelization. Now we have seasonal and annual variations in weather. So that's just weather volatility, drought, flooding, less predictability in that, which would fall under climate change as well. And so what do we need? We need, in this region, in the lower Mississippi Delta or the lower Mississippi Alluvial Valley, we need resilient habitats. And what does that look like? A lot of that is diversity and management strategies to kind of plan for some things working out and some things not working. But the biggest would be surface water infrastructure. So reservoirs, tailwater recovery ditches. So surface water is basically water from a bayou, river, lake. It's on the surface. It's not in the ground like groundwater. And surface water infrastructure or storage is just the ability to store that in-house. So like a pond or some sort of reservoir that you build on your property that you can irrigate out of, to not have to rely on groundwater, which depletes aquifers, or surface water sources like streams and bayous that may be prone to drought. And here in the lower Mississippi Alluvial Valley / Mississippi Delta, water is very scarce from July to October, specifically shallow water. So building in that surface water infrastructure into farms will help those early migrators that Dr. Askren just showed. So the northern pintail and blue-winged teal and the shorebird species. So that leads us to private lands. So private lands, most of the wetlands in the U.S. are privately owned, so 75%. So we have a huge opportunity, and we have to work with landowners for conservation efforts on these lands. These lands are comprised of agricultural lands, moist soil wetlands, or properties that are being managed for waterfowl. And we need strong nonprofits and researchers like Dr. Askren, Five Oaks, Ducks Unlimited, and so many other partners who help us conserve these acres. And we need all of our management actions to be based on science. Some other challenges we need to address would include utilizing acres that aren't being flooded over winter in rice systems. So if you take a drive in the Delta during this time of the year or even earlier, you'll see some rice fields that are just sitting there and it looks like moon dust, just dry, no water or cover crop. And losing topsoil is a big deal in this area of the country and in the Midwest. So we need those science-based best management practices, or BMPs, to improve farming operations. So a BMP is basically a best management practice. It's a small change, hopefully, to operations that can lead to waterbird utilization, and then also it would improve farming operations as well. Hopefully, we're looking to find solutions that are good for waterbirds and good for farmers. So some examples would be fall flooding, reducing fall tillage, surface water irrigation, and all that leads to providing better habitat and a better habitat mosaic within agricultural and non-agricultural wetlands. All right, so within agriculture, not all ag is equal, like we talked about. Soil erosion is a big deal. So one of the ways we can, on a large scale, we can help producers or farmers change their operations is by using Farm Bill dollars. So the Farm Bill is legislation and funding that it comes from the federal government, but is administered by the NRCS, Natural Resource Conservation Service. And some of the more popular programs that are relevant for waterfowl and shorebird conservation would be EQIP, Environmental Quality Incentives Program, CSP, Conservation Stewardship Program, and WRE, Wetland Reserve Easement. EQIP and CSP are very similar. They are looking for farmers to improve water quality on the farm, so capturing water, not sending nutrients downstream, improving soil health, and having a wildlife benefit. The way those two programs would differ would just be kind of scope of the program. EQIP would be more a couple fields on a farm, where CSP would be a whole farm plan. And then WRE is a little bit different style. It's an easement. So for 30 years or in perpetuity, the landowner is giving up some of the rights of their property. But it often occurs on marginal ag lands where acres that frequently flood or aren't producing. We're trying to turn those acres back into wildlife habitat and all the ecosystem function and services returning to those marginal acres. So those not enrolled in programs, biologists, conservation professionals, we need to incentivize conservation and also help producers be connected to Farm Bill programs in the NRCS. So here's a cool timeline of kind of rice, if there's any rice farmers on this call. This is just general, it's not exact. But if we start on the left, we have March and April, we have drilled rice starting to emerge. And then later in the summer, we go to the top, we start getting closed canopy rice. Below that, we're seeing some grain being made and starting to dry. And then sometime, depending on where you are in Louisiana, this gets started in July, and I'm sure in North Arkansas it'd be toward September, October. We start combining these fields, taking the grain out of the fields, and then best management practices for shorebirds and waterfowl would be removing some percentage of the rice straw, if not all the rice straw, and flooding. And if you can flood as early as possible in that September, October time frame, you'll get some lesser yellowlegs and other shorebirds. And just for context, the Arkansas, Louisiana, and Mississippi is somewhere around 1.7 million acres of rice annually, with Arkansas generally being around 1 million to 1.2 million acres, Louisiana 400,000, and Mississippi 100 to 155,000. So Arkansas has the bulk of the rice, but Louisiana and Mississippi both have a lot of rice acreage too. Multi-species management in impounded systems. These managed wetlands are really important because they can provide habitat for a host of bird species. These systems have higher bird abundance and more diverse plant assemblages than non-managed systems can. That's Kaminsky and some others found that in several studies. And so in these impoundments, a lot of times we're doing moist soil management, which moist soil management means managing for annual grasses and forbs that produce high yields of seeds and tubers. So an annual versus a perennial. Annual, it completes its whole life cycle in 1 year. So germination all the way through dropping seed in a year. And biodiversity is very high in these systems because you have all these different grasses and forbs, and all these different structures and species of plants, which provides really good structure for aquatic invertebrates, those water bugs that we were talking about that are vitally important for ducks and shorebirds and a lot of other species too. So these moist soil wetlands are early successional habitat. So what that means is it needs disturbance to return to succession. So for some producers, that can be accomplished through mechanical, a tractor and a disc, fire, water, or some sort of herbicide. But typically, um, a, a couple times every 5 years, 1, 2, 3 times within 5 years, you would lightly disc that unit, and that tends to be more common practice in Arkansas. But any of those methods work. You just need to disturb the unit. A really cool fact about these managed systems, when the water depth is appropriate, you can have up to 131 species out of 156 that frequent this area if you have 10 inches or less of water. So deeper water is not always what we're going for, and most of the time shallow water. And when we're talking in a shorebird context, really 4 to 8 inches is ideal depth. And for those waterfowl managers out there, and so some other people in this region, you might think like evaporative loss, you might not be able to hold that 4 to 8 inches of flood very long without evaporating in the summertime. But there's a lot of ways you can get different water depths in your units. If you're doing wetland construction, you can create loafing berms or micro topography without the unit, have the unit not be zero graded or perfectly flat. That micro topography will allow a lot of different species to use it. So incorporate that into any units out there for those managers out there. And then when we're talking about moist soil and managed impoundments, diversity is the name of the game. We want diverse plants. We want diversity in height and structure of those plants to give us diverse aquatic invertebrates, and we also want diversity in our water control. So if it's a multi field or multi impoundment farm, we want to ideally flood at different times, stagger flood, so that way maybe field 1 you flood in early season, so after you complete your drawdown and after the winter into the spring, and you begin flooding in the early fall, flood 1 unit up for shorebirds and some of the early migrants, and then stagger flood. So over the coming weeks and months, flood a different unit and a different unit and a different unit. So you want gradual flooding, so that way some of the shorter leg species can use it. And then obviously surface water is what we would encourage to flood those units. So build surface water into your farms or support organizations that are helping farmers build that surface water resiliency. Same thing for drawdown. We want diversity in drawdowns. We want prolonged habitat. So we don't want duck season to be over January 31st and everyone immediately run to their water control structures and just open the gates and let all the water escape. A lot of the waterfowl species and shorebird species are staying in to February and March, and then some of the South American wintering species are coming back through March, April. So if you can prolong that habitat and let it persist on the landscape, it'd be super beneficial. And then when we are drawing down in the spring, we're shooting for a slow drawdown. So typically that's a 2 to 6 week long process, depending on beavers and all sorts of other things. But typically it's 1 to 2 inches a week is what you're shooting for. And if you have flashboard risers or other fine scale or screw gates, you would just barely let that water out. And this is another good tool for managers in this area, small grain management. So this example is going to be millet, but basically, if you're trying to take a field out of rice or another crop and into moist soil, millet can be great for a year due to some of the chemicals used in agriculture. Moist soil might not get established the first year or two, or your disturbance method might not have worked great. So you might need to pivot to millet instead of moist soil. But regardless, this can be used in a whole impoundment, or it could be within a moist soil unit where you have non-desirable species. And these 3 pictures are just showing that you can have great shorebird habitat This millet was planted around August 1st to 10th. I can't exactly remember, but it served as great habitat for about 25 or 30 days for shorebirds and some other species. And then within 60 days, really within about 45 or 50 days, we got incredible yields of millet for waterfowl too. So millet and other small grains are a great tool, especially some of the shorter day varieties. Um, excuse me. All right. So parting thoughts. In the LMAV or the Mississippi Delta, we need more shallow water. There's a deficit for shallow water in that August to October period for early migratory waterfowl and shorebirds. Ryan's cool meta barcoding data, and then some of our talks about niche and resource partitioning, how multiple species can utilize the same resources, has showed us there's a lot of overlap to ducks and shorebirds. So what's good for shorebirds is good for ducks generally, and we need surface water in the lower Mississippi Alluvial Valley. We need surface water resiliency built into farms to provide that habitat, because an issue, especially in my part of Arkansas this year, was not having surface water available in rivers and bayous to pump into fields. So a lot of fields have been dry, and we haven't had the best habitat we've ever had this year. So if we can help farmers and help the NRCS and build surface water and encourage the use of surface water on farms, it would benefit the farmer and wildlife for sure. And like Ryan said earlier, waterfowl management is compatible with attracting early ducks and holding over winter. So it's not just about flooding around Thanksgiving for duck season. We need to have diverse. We need to use diversity in our management. And then finally, incentives, conservation incentives. We need those to promote sustainable use of farms. And we also need biologists on the landscape who are conducting landowner outreach, providing that technical support, researchers supporting, or I'm sorry, researchers doing science-based management for multi-species benefit, and then financial support for conservation efforts. And I wanted to thank Ryan again and Five Oaks, because partnership and collaboration is how we do conservation in this geography and across the country. And I'd also like to thank our federal, state, and other NGO partners. And these QR codes will take you to Manomet's website and Five Oaks if you'd like to learn more about either or both of our organization. And we're happy to take questions.
All right. We have some questions. That was very exciting. For a second, we almost went into a fight, ducks versus shorebirds. But we're going to remain with the quote that what works with shorebirds works for ducks as well. So we're all staying in the same lane. So the first question says, were DNA fecal samples taken across varying temperature ranges, and as an example, extended below freezing periods versus stable warmer periods?
Yeah, that's a good question, Matt. Hope you all are doing well up in Tennessee. No is the full answer. We did not have as consistent sampling, so that's really just from the pilot study, the first year of the study. Since then, we have taken samples on a daily basis, so we'll be able to capture those changes in weather, temperature, to really understand that change in invertebrates, really change in all diet. Unfortunately, those are all in a freezer still. We have not sent those off for analyses yet. We don't have funding yet to do that, though I think we'll be able to get it relatively easy. But that's really out of a paper I'm working on. It's kind of a proof of concept for using those methods and just getting a little bit of that information out early. But no, that's a great question.
And you say yet, that's the key word.
Yeah.
Looking for funding. So another question for both of you is, from your experience, how perceptive are farmers to implementing the best management practices that benefit birds? Are there incentive, financial, technical, otherwise, something that can encourage their participation?
Yeah, I can start on that one, and Ryan can help me out. Yeah, there's a wide range of producers out there. There's some there's some guys and girls who have waterfowl properties that are only really managing for waterfowl. And a lot of those producers or managers are doing right by the ducks and the land. So they're once they go to a Five Oaks field day or a Manomet field day or see good habitat, it's very easy for them to go back to their farm and do it. A lot of times they'll do it without any incentives, other than knowing that it's the best for their property for attracting wildlife. And then more on the commercial ag side, there's also a range of producers. There's some producers who just need a little financial support and they don't necessarily trying to say this. They might not necessarily care about the birds. They just need a little financial support, so they'll kind of do whatever. And then most farmers get really excited about adopting changes on their farms that are beneficial through like equip that are beneficial to their soil, which saves them money, helps them retain nutrients, makes their water quality and then downstream neighbors' water quality better, and then also has a wildlife benefit. So a lot of producers using equip may not know all the wildlife benefits, but over their contract, they may see them. And then someone like myself or someone with another nonprofit would work with that producer and help them learn more about the biology of the birds that they're using. And then like Manomet, we do surveys on those acres. So I'm constantly working with landowners to implement those best management practices. So you kind of have this wide range of producers who some don't want to change anything about their farm because that's the way granddad did it. And then there's some that are in it mainly for the birds, and there's some that are kind of in the middle where they want to produce a crop and then also attract wildlife at the same time. Ryan, feel free to chime in on any of that.
Yeah, I no, that was a great point, and I'll kind of lead into the next question, Glenn's. How can you offer private landowners to alter their management of their property to ensure this mosaic? It's like what Leish talked about. It's really building those relationships, especially with early adopters, people that have a conservation ethic, and then really using them as kind of your disciples to go out and spread that to other landowners in their network. That's really, and this is more broadly just waterfowl wetland management in general. It seems if you get those people that are in conservation that are well respected to see the benefits of these things on their properties, that they're really good at spreading that to the masses to make it happen on a larger scale.
All right, looks like we both have favorite duck and shorebird species. I'm gonna go Wimbrel on the shorebird side because I fell in love with them tagging them. Manomet has a team of Wimbrelers, if you will. We have part of our team in South America and Brazil looking for some important wintering sites right this second, and then we'll be also hopefully catching some in the coastal Texas and coastal Louisiana. So Wimbrel definitely a favorite. And then my favorite duck changes on the day. I can't do that, but I would say probably American green wing teal today, Ryan.
Yeah, favorite duck is kind of like picking your favorite child. I don't think that's really a fair choice to have to make. I'm a huge fan of Northern Pintail. I just think they're beautiful, incredible flyers, go really cool places, use a pretty good variety of habitat. But really, favorite waterfowl, I'd have to go emperor goose. Like they're just one of the most beautiful, coolest birds I've ever gotten to see and hold.
I'm gonna change my answer to wood duck. I think I love teal, but wood duck. And blue wing teal. I don't know. I can't pick. And then we have another question about: can you speak to the degree that emergent or hemi-marsh management would differ from moist soil units for benefiting shorebirds, waterfowl, and possibly other waterbirds such as rail and bittern? So that's a great point. So hemi-marsh or emergent marsh is typically going to be too deep for dabbling ducks and shorebirds generally. There could be some mud flat on the edges of that hemi marsh, depending on if there's any evaporation or some other factors. But one really cool thing about the Five Oaks farm and other farms that have established these surface water reservoirs is you can build these reservoirs and you can build them any shape you want, but basically you're storing water to irrigate. And over time, you can manage those reservoirs to function as emergent marshes, grow up in cattails around the edge, and serve that hemi marsh kind of mosaic. And everything we're doing, I don't want any producer to take this talk and go turn his whole farm into mudflat, especially in July or August, because if he's just managing for mudflat, in a couple days he's going to have cracked dry dirt. We want everything to be diverse management. So some units for shorebird and waterfowl management, some units mudflat, some units a little bit deeper. So yeah, we want all waterbirds to have a home in the LMAV. Ryan, any more thoughts?
Yeah, I would say there is some potential to do all three in a single season. So I'm thinking to Overflow National Wildlife Refuge here in Southeast Arkansas. They do a great job of keeping units deeper, and they've kind of maintained really, I think it's giant rice cut grass, but some kind of emergent marsh, deeper water that, early in the spring, early summer, has some great least bittern nesting habitat, some use by I well, I've never heard of king rail, but I'd imagine there's maybe a king rails down there. But providing decent nesting habitat early in the summer, then drawing that down kind of mid to late summer after they've hatched out, exposing some mudflats and the number of fowl ropes and dowitchers and all sorts of cool shorebirds coming through there. Late summer is really impressive, and probably the biggest loser out of that is the waterfowl because you're not having that really high yielding annual moist soil native seed producers coming up in time with those late drawdowns, but there's still some great use by waterfowl as kind of roosting habitat and safety from the cover that those units provide. So it's difficult, but there's definitely some possibility to do all three in a single season.
Yeah, and we'd also hope like you could have one of those units right next to a moist soil unit. So like Ryan said, it's possible. And then some of these new WRE units, when they're designing them, they're digging kind of canals or bayous through the unit and then taking some of that borrowed dirt and building the berms. So in a WRE unit, you could also have deeper canals that you could plant or manage for cattails, and then the berms, which might allow for shorebirds and waterfowl. So it's like Ryan said, at Overflow, and then in some of these created units, you can have habitat for all three. Ryan, this looks like a question for you. This last one.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. I did not expect flooded corn to make it into this talk today. Yeah, there's not a lot of benefits to a lot of suites of species. I'd say obviously waterfowl use it, so it's some variety of habitat. Uh, I would hope that through all these conversations, we come out with the recognition that we need more wetlands, we need better habitat all up and down the flyway, and a lot of that includes natural moist soil management techniques over just agricultural crops that provide a broader suite of nutritional needs for a wider variety of waterfowl, and also probably shorebirds, just in kind of the structure of those units. Transforming the future, we'll see. I'll be curious what changes. Sorry, reading the questions on the side as well, but looks like we're getting the shepherd's hook.
Yep. Time to wrap up, guys.
I have one more thing to add. So generally shorebirds prefer less vegetation than waterfowl and shallower water. So like corn versus a moist soil unit or mudflat, a unit that has mudflat and moist soil in it. There's going to be that stat of 131 species out of 156 prefer 10 inches or less of water. That's not in a cornfield. That's in a unit that has diverse plants that lead to diverse aquatic invertebrates. And in waterfowl and shorebird management, there's some situations where you might need a hot crop, but diversity is the name of the game.
Well, looks like everyone was just sitting tight behind the screen because we barely lost anyone. So very interesting talk about ducks and shorebirds. Thank you again, Ryan and Elijah, for being here with us today and sharing this very exciting conversation and needs for the future. Just for everyone that's a first timer here, Manomet Conservation Sciences is a nonprofit based in the town of Manomet, Massachusetts, but our work spans throughout the Americas, from Alaska to Tierra del Fuego in Chile and Argentina. So we're built on partnerships, like you both mentioned. So if you like to stay connected, follow Manomet on social media, subscribe to our newsletter. And if you haven't had time to scan those QR codes, just go to our website, manomet.org. We welcome all of your support. As they both mentioned, we need to keep this going for conservation. And I'm guessing that what's good for shorebirds and ducks is also good for people. So I hope that everyone has a great rest of the day today, and stay tuned to find this talk on our YouTube channel. So thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank y'all.
Yeah, thank you all.